This was the town of Belchite in Spain. When the Spanish Civil War ended in 1939, it was left in its ruins to serve as a memorial to the devastation of Spain in one of the most savage civil conflicts Europe has ever seen. The Civil War lasted from 1936 to 1939. It cost perhaps 500,000 lives. It ruined cities, towns, and villages. For some, the victors, it was a crusade against godless revolution. For others, the defeated, it was a struggle against the forces of reaction that had oppressed Spain for generations. The Spanish Civil War still haunts the world's imagination. Many came to see it as the prelude to the Second World War, the first battle between democracy and fascism. Thousands of volunteers came to fight and die in a foreign land for ideals they believed to be their own. But the Spanish knew that the war had Spanish causes. It was, after all, their country that was ruined, their history that exploded. 40 years on, the dictatorship has dissolved, and the survivors can speak more freely. They can question some of the myths. They can evoke something of what they saw and understood during the Spanish Civil War. On July 17th, 1936, a group of army officers rebelled against the government of the Spanish Republic. Workers took up arms to fight the rising, and what began as a military coup led to almost 3 years of civil war. For both sides, political opponents became enemies, to be hunted down and killed. The Republic, La Niña Bonita, the beautiful girl. 5 years before the Civil War, joyful demonstrations throughout Spain agreed to the proclamation of the Republic. The monarchy had fallen without violence. To the crowds, the Republic meant that Spain had broken through to the 20th century, to progress, to a long-delayed victory for social and economic change.
It was an April day, spring-like. It was a mild day with sunshine. So we walked, and there were huge throngs of people in lorries, the few cars that there were in those days, in trams. And then, unexpectedly and surprisingly, Republican flags appeared everywhere. Nobody knew where so many had come from.
While the crowds rejoiced, King Alfonso was spending his final hours in the royal palace. Only weeks before, he had led the solemn Palm Sunday ceremonies, unaware that the monarchy was doomed. Over the years, one part of Spanish society after another had lost faith in the monarchy. The middle class despised Alfonso XIII for tolerating a 7-year military dictatorship. The ruling classes now feared the king could no longer protect them. And for the workers out on the streets that day, the monarchy was the clamp, holding an oppressive system together. 2 days before, on April the 12th, royalist parties were heavily defeated in local elections. Suddenly the king understood his own isolation. While Spain rejoiced, he went unresisting into exile. The king was replaced by a government of mostly middle-class liberals, but their plans for an advanced democracy were out of step with history. Elsewhere in Europe, liberalism was weakened by economic depression, poisoned by dictatorship. The government was releasing huge forces in this tightly repressed society, the class hatreds of the agrarian poor and of the rapidly growing working class. Yet these Republican optimists and their socialist allies thought that orderly reforms would soon transform the nation. Justino de Azcarate was a member of that first Republican government of 1931.
There was this feeling of freedom. For many years, publications had been subject to censorship and academic freedom had been restricted. Now there was a general trend towards freedom, and also new laws to create a social and economic order that would be more just and more egalitarian.
The farm laborers and the industrial workers, underpaid, almost unprotected, and frequently unemployed, hoped that the Republic would immediately end exploitation and break the power of the old ruling classes. Narciso Julian was a young socialist at the time.
The birth of the Republic brought great hope among the working class that their aspirations would be satisfied. That was the main feeling among industrial workers and peasants. For centuries, peasants had longed to own land. Industrial workers wanted their union rights recognized, the right to strike, to a fair salary, to social benefits that they didn't have, social security, and so on.
Sociales que no las tenía, ¿no? Desde el punto de vista de la seguridad social y de todas estas cuestiones, ¿no? Es decir, todos esos problemas económicos.
So here were all these social and economic problems that had to be solved. The arrival of a democratic regime of the Republic meant so much for a vast majority of workers, the hope that all these aspirations would come true.
A cumplir esas aspiraciones.